Today, we're diving into the life of one of 20th century India's most compelling and, frankly, complex figures, Swami Karpatriji. He was a scholar, an activist, and an ascetic of such extreme discipline that his very name became a symbol of his principles. So how did a man who renounced the world come to shake its very foundations? Now, just a quick note before we jump in. Everything we're going to cover today is drawn directly from the biography Karpatri Swami, A Life Philosophy. So our goal here isn't to judge or persuade, but just to unpack the story of this figure as it's told in this text.
So who was this man, really? How did a boy from a small village grow up to become a figure with such immense spiritual and, political influence? That's the big question we're exploring today.
All right, here's our roadmap. We'll journey through his life in 6 parts, starting with his early years and his path to asceticism, then looking at his role as a public voice for Dharma. After that, we'll cover the massive cow protection movement he led, explore his unwavering principles through some stories, and finally, we'll examine his enduring legacy.
Okay, so it all begins with a boy named Hari Narayan, and right from the get-go, he showed this intense inclination towards a life of spiritual pursuit, a life far, far away from the ordinary path.
You can see his path was set from a really young age. Born in 1907, Hari Narayan leaves home at just 17 to go to Kashi, the ancient city of learning. There, he just dives in, mastering these incredibly complex philosophical texts. And then comes the crucial turning point, his initiation into Danda Sannyas by his guru. This was it, a formal, total renunciation of all worldly ties. In this renunciation, it wasn't just a title for him. It was a profound commitment that he lived every single moment of his life, a commitment that would eventually earn him his famous name. You know, his name itself tells such a huge part of the story. Karpatri literally means one who uses their hand as a bowl. I mean, think about that. According to the biography, he would accept food alms only in his cupped hands, and he'd eat just that single portion each day. It was a visible, daily symbol of his complete detachment from all material things. His daily routine, his dincharya, was incredibly rigorous. We're talking waking up at 2 a.m. for meditation, bathing before 3:30 a.m. no matter the weather, walking for miles every single day, and always traveling on foot. He completely rejected using vehicles, and he slept on the bare ground. This wasn't some temporary practice. This was his life. So, from this foundation of really intense personal discipline, Swami Karpatri moves into the public sphere. He becomes an influential organizer and a powerful voice for his vision of Dharma. And he didn't just preach, he built institutions. For him, individual discipline wasn't enough. Society itself needed structure. He founded the Dharma Sangh to unify spiritual traditions and the Dharma Veer Dal as a volunteer corps. But his most audacious move? That came in 1948 with the Ramrajya Parishad, an actual political party. In the midst of a newly independent and secular India, he aimed to directly shape its governance based on ancient Dharmic principles. His public message was really captured in 4 core slogans that became the mission of his organizations: victory to Dharma, destruction to adharma, goodwill among all beings, and welfare for the world. This was his essential call to action. This brings us to probably the most dramatic chapter of his public life, a massive nationwide movement that led to a major confrontation right in the heart of the nation's capital. The year was 1966, and the singular goal was crystal clear: to get the Indian government to enact a nationwide constitutional ban on cow slaughter, a principle he saw as absolutely fundamental to Dharma. And he mobilized on an incredible scale. On November 7, 1966, he led this massive procession of ascetics, religious leaders, and citizens right to the steps of the Indian Parliament in Delhi. The source material describes a crowd so vast that it literally brought the city to a standstill. The protest, however, did not end peacefully. The biography says that the situation escalated and it led to clashes with the police. The authorities opened fire, which resulted in casualties, and Swami Karpatri, along with other key leaders of the movement, was arrested. But his conviction didn't waver in prison. Not at all. He began a fast that, according to the source, lasted for a staggering 72 days. He only ended it when the government of the day gave an assurance that a high-level committee would be formed to seriously consider the demand for a ban. And you see, this public activism was really just a direct extension of his personal life.
one that was governed by an unwavering adherence to principles he got straight from the scriptures.
This quote here, it reveals just how detailed his adherence to principle really was. He believed it was improper for a monk to accept alms touched by a young girl before her sacred thread ceremony, citing it as being against the rules of the Shastras, or the ancient scriptures. And this wasn't just some theory for him. The biography tells of a time he went to a house for alms, and when he learned the food was offered by a girl who didn't meet this specific criterion, he refused it. But instead of just walking away, he patiently explained the scriptural reasoning to the family. For him, the principle was absolute.
So how does this biography sum up the life of a man like this? Well, it paints a picture of a figure who was a scholar, an ascetic, and an activist all at the same time, leaving a really distinct mark on India's religious and political landscape. His legacy is really fourfold. He is remembered as a fierce defender of traditional principles, an influential scholar who wrote several books, a key figure who brought religion right into the political arena, and, above all, a personal example of extreme asceticism.
The biography concludes with this perspective. It views his life not just as a series of events, but as a guide, framing his actions, however controversial, as being intended for the welfare of the world as he saw it. And that leaves us with a pretty big question, doesn't it? Regardless of whether you agree with his ideology or his methods, the story of Swami Karpatri prompts us to consider, in a rapidly changing world, what is the meaning of a life lived in absolute, total dedication to ancient principles?